There's a question I get asked quite often: how do you combine different styles of music together? That was my song Deviation 2070, which I just remixed and filmed a new video for. You can check that out on the channel. My goal with this song was to combine Southern rock and prog rock. So how can we combine different styles of music together and make it sound natural and cohesive while also capturing the essence of each of those styles? One of my favorite things about prog is the ability to do almost anything you want. Throw in a jazz break or some polka or maybe some Bulgarian wedding music. It really opens up your options as a writer. But of course, with that freedom comes the difficulty of actually moving between styles of music and not having it sound completely out of place and disjointed. So let's take a look at that tune of mine, and I'll share some compositional approaches that I take when I'm combining different styles of music. Before we can combine two musical genres, we first need to know the sound and characteristics of each of them on their own. In my example, we have prog rock and southern rock. Prog is somewhat hard to pin down because it has such a wide range of influences, but some common elements of prog rock would be experimentation, unusual song structures, technical proficiency, odd rhythms, drawing influence from classical and jazz and using it in rock music. This idea of combining high art, something like classical music, with low art, rock music. Southern rock, on the other hand, is a little easier to define. It's the combination of rock, country, and blues, blending the rock music of the 60s and 70s with roots music genres like blues and country. Later, Southern rock started to incorporate longer jam sessions as well, with extended solos, drawing from that blues influence as well as some jazz. So we have our two styles of music. To be able to write something that can combine them together, I have to first be able to write and play in each style individually. If I've never listened or learned any Southern rock, it's going to be impossible for me to bring any of that influence into my music. So this is the first step, to study the genres of music you want to bring into your own music. And I don't just mean learn one jazz chord or one blues lick or one flamenco rhythm. Really study that style of music. Watch some instructional material, listen to albums, study up on the history of the genre. Even if you're just bringing a little bit of influence from a style of music into your own, you want to sound like you really understand that music. Harmonically, Southern rock is pretty simple, often favoring blues-based harmonies, 1, 4s, 5s, or simple major and minor progressions you would find in country. Riffs and solos are usually pentatonic or blues scale based, and progressions will often have somewhat of a mixolydian sound, like Sweet Home Alabama, or even Rambling Man, which has some straight major harmony mixed with a little bit of mixolydian. Rhythmically, Southern rock is also pretty simple, rarely straying away from 4/4 or 12/8, though there are a few notable examples like the song Whipping Post, which has a few odd time signatures. Sometimes you'll get a shuffle groove in 12/8 that's swung, but more often than not, it's a straight feel like you'd find in rock music. The song structures and melodies are simple and easy to digest, but the songs do often go off into longer jam sessions that feature some pretty impressive soloing in a lot of cases. So with some of these ideas in mind, how can I combine this with prog rock? Firstly, rock music is the connection between these two styles, so I can focus on a more straight groove and some basic rock riffing ideas like using a blues scale, for example. The blues scale is actually used in prog rock more than you would think. The main riff from 21st Century Schizoid Man, for example, arguably one of the first prog rock songs, it's coming right from a C blues scale. And a band like Yes has plenty of examples of pentatonic or blues-based riffs in their music, like in Siberian Khatru. A lot of times I'll make these connections when I'm trying to combine different styles of music, figure out what these two styles have in common. Now, what kind of things can I do to bring in the prog rock influence? The easiest first step would be to add some odd time signatures and maybe some unusual phrase length. That will instantly make this sound much more proggy. I can also make this a little more harmonically sophisticated, nothing too crazy, but a few unexpected chords, maybe some inversions, just to spice it up a bit. I could also make the song structure less predictable, avoiding the typical verse-chorus structure, for example. With all of that in mind, here's the main riff from my song. So the riff starts like this. And that's all right out of the G blues scale. Now I'm thinking of this as being G minor. Kind of like a G Dorian sound, really. And I went for a little bit of a darker sound here than that kind of bluesy Mixolydian sound. I thought it worked better for this style, having some of that darker influence. It worked better for the prog element of this, but it still has that bluesy kind of thing at the core. So that's all right out of the blues scale. And one other thing here is that I'm cutting off a beat from the second measure. So you have a measure of 4/4 and then a measure of 3/4. Pretty easy way to get an odd time signature, but it brings some of that prog influence in there, right? And then the second part. So here we have this run, mostly from Dorian, but I bring in this leading tone, the major seventh. Pretty typical sounding, but just a few weird notes to kind of throw it off a little bit. And then the third section looks like this. So here we really go off the rails a little bit and definitely bring in more of that kind of prog influence. The chords here are pretty simple. C, or C7, B flat, F, and A flat. All of this is coming from Dorian, except for this A flat, which is your flat 2 chord in G minor. That could be borrowed from Phrygian if you want to think of it that way. I'm kind of thinking of it as being a leading tone chord, like a half step above, that goes right back to the root. So I'm arpeggiating each of these chords with some chromaticism. But the really weird thing here is that these are in groups of 5. So it's like 3 measures of 5/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a single beat. So here's the whole first half of this riff. The second half of the riff is the same as the first half until it gets to the 5/8 measures. In the second half, it looks like this. Same chords here, but with some inversions. So we have C, C7, and we have B flat over D. And you have F, or F7, over E flat. Like a third inversion 7th chord, kind of just raising the bass up here, and then it goes to A flat. And I have a little bit of a run here this time. And then A flat, major 7, C, and that leads to the second section of the song. So the second half of the riff. So that's the main theme of the song, and here's the B section, or the secondary theme. So this section is actually a little simpler than the main riff. In the chords it goes B flat, C, and then G minor. There's some movement here in the riff, but when I get to that G minor chord, or that G minor 7 chord, it goes to a classic 7/8 rhythm, which is grouped as 2-2-3, a really common prog rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then the second time there, the bass note moves down. And then it goes to the last part of this section, which has this rising chord progression. So it's E flat, major 7. You would never see a major 7 chord in a Southern rock song. And I'm kind of moving this up chromatically. So E flat, major 7, C over E, F, and then D over F sharp. So it's this rising chromatic chord progression. That's very common for prog rock, right? Kind of bringing in that classical influence, but that's way out of left field for southern rock. So once again, I'm kind of combining these two ideas. This progression sounds fairly accurate, right? In fact, if I change that G minor chord to a G major chord, basically have the solo section from Freebird, but I bring in a few of these weird chords towards the end. And then a few odd time signatures, still keeping that prog rock influence there. And it goes right back to the main riff from there. And there's also a melody on top here. A lot of these double stops, so two notes at once, which is very common in country and really in this style of rock music too. That kind of stuff sounds very appropriate. More kind of pentatonic bends and stuff like that as well. So there's a little bit of that influence still in here, especially in the lead guitar. These two sections make up a good portion of the song, but I'm not treating them like a verse and chorus where they're going back and forth. The structure is considerably less predictable here. Now let's take a look at the big solo at the end of the song. So in southern rock, you would expect to have a guitar solo at some point. Not in every song, but probably in most songs. Definitely taking from that kind of blues rock influence. And so I wanted to throw in a big guitar solo at the end of the song. And what's happening behind the solo, as well as in the solo itself, is really, once again, kind of this combination of southern rock and prog rock. So the rhythm underneath, you have these chords, basically big power chords. It's like G, G minor, C over E, F, so that's all still Dorian. And then the second time we get E flat and D minor, which is coming from G natural minor or G Aeolian. So I'm kind of doing this modal mixture thing where I'm doing Dorian and then Aeolian. Kind of the country southern rock sound here, and then more of a darker sound that's more probably fit for prog rock in the second half. So that's what's happening with the chords underneath. The rhythm underneath is entirely based on this 7/8 rhythm that I talked about earlier, or 7/4, depending on how you want to count it. So 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. So the solo starts with this blues bend, but I use the whammy bar, and then it's into a big scale sequence, like a shreddy sequence. Something like that. And then it's right back to the pentatonic stuff. And then this big tapping run, which is also pentatonic. And then into some more scale-based ideas or arpeggio ideas. So I'm bringing in that Aeolian flavor there because that's where these chords are happening. And then it's right back to the pentatonic. This is a descending sequence of fours in G minor pentatonic. 1 2 3 4. Something like that. And then some more pentatonic licks. Except for this last phrase, which is catching those Aeolian sounds. So the second half of the solo, we have this big scale run. Right out of G natural minor, and then it's right back to the pentatonic or the blues. So almost all of that is the blues scale, save for one note. And then from here, it's right to a bunch of sweeps. So that is following the chords that happen E flat to D minor. So and then we're into the end of the solo where I'm basically playing just arpeggios, like this fast 4-note sequence. Just following the chords that are happening underneath. And that is reminiscent of a lot of these kind of blues rock licks where you have just the same pattern over and over again. Right, that where you kind of get these circular licks that happen over and over again, like half the licks in the Freebird solo, for example. So this is kind of following that tradition a little bit, but I'm using arpeggios instead, so it sounds a little bit more modern. So I'm really weaving between all of these blues rock pentatonic ideas, maybe kind of like more shreddy pentatonic blues ideas, and then moving into some more kind of classic shred patterns or more modern sounds like the sweep picking and some of these big scale runs and the octave tapping thing, all of that. So I really wanted to try to combine a bunch of those different elements together in this solo, catch some of those pentatonic riffs where it made sense, but then also do the shreddy stuff where that made sense as well. Now, all of the parts of the song that I've covered so far have some of that Southern rock influence, but there's one other section of this song where I break from that influence completely. So this middle section of the song is actually probably my favorite part of the entire song. Very fusion influenced, and most of this is in 5, 5/4, 5/8, depending on how you want to count it. It's kind of this 2 and then 3 rhythm, so like 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3, and then there's a measure of 7 at the end of each phrase. I won't worry about the rhythm too much. I'm going to focus mostly on the chords. It moves to C minor here. The rest of the song is in G minor, but I use this A flat chord from the A section of the song to move to C minor. So do A flat to G7, so like 6 to 5 in C minor, and then it moves to C minor here. I start on the 6th chord of C minor, so it's A flat major 9 over C. You have an F minor 13, I believe, and then A flat major 7, A flat minor 6, and then C minor 9. And you can see this is so far removed from Southern rock here, right? I'm using these chords that you would never hear in Southern rock, and especially along with this rhythm. But one thing I am doing here is to continue the melodic idea, at least the contour of the melodic motif from the B section. So we have this, right? That was our B section melody. And here we have, so basically that same contour of melody kind of changed to fit these chords, but that's happening over top of these chords. So I'm using that melody to connect these two different sections together to kind of connect this fusion section to the rest of the song. Otherwise, I think it feels even more out of place. So that can be a good compositional tool if you're moving into a completely different style as well, to keep some kind of melodic element similar between two sections to kind of keep them a little bit more connected. There's this transition back to the B section. It's C minor, A flat over C, F over C, B flat over C. So there's a lot of pedaling off this C note. And that moves right to this. It goes right back to the B section. My main thought with this fusion section was, at the end of the day, this is more of a prog tune than it is a Southern rock tune, and I was totally cool with delving more into this fusion sound for a little while, just to add some variety and some overall dynamics to the tune. So there are a few ideas and approaches you can take when combining different styles of music together. It's difficult to do this and not have it sound forced, especially if you're just trying this for the first time, so maybe give a few of these compositional devices a shot that I used here. These can work really well with combining almost any style of music together, even styles that you would think are very far removed from each other. I found you can almost combine anything together if you have some of the skill sets to do it. Hopefully some of these ideas were helpful for you. I'm going to let the full song play here at the end of the video so you can hear the final product. But if you enjoyed this lesson, subscribe, hit the bell notification, like, comment, share, and I will see you all in the next video. Till then, stay proggy.